Hello, Gamecock fans. I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry. Welcome to Ball Don't Lie, SGTV's premier live sports show.
JP and I will be giving you our weekly insight every Friday.
This week on the show, we're previewing the Super Bowl and continuing our college basketball coverage.
And later, updates on the NBA and the NHL season so far.
Be sure to stick around for head-to-head pick'ems.
And without further ado, welcome to Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome to the Kennedy Greenhouse Studio.
If you are a person in the Carolinas with functioning legs and a football jersey, please report to Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte.
We watched Ice Bryce Young do his thing and lead the Panthers to their second win of the season.
I think Matthew McConaughey and Dabo Swinney are very similar. I feel like maybe one day McConaughey could play Dabo in a movie.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that love seeing Clemson lose.
This is just what football is about, man. Two teams that run the football, play defense.
That guy's Superman sometimes, dude. We've got to pick the Yankees, otherwise I'd be kicked out of my own family.
Yankees.
It's time. Is it time?
I think it's time.
This is Ball Don't Lie.
And the Eagles dominated the Washington Commanders in the NFC Championship on Sunday, dropping 55 points. Sorry, I forgot about that one miss, but as they advance to the third Super Bowl in the last 8 years for them.
Yeah, and we got to give credit where credit is due. This offense really put everything together. Jalen Hurts, I think, had a really great game. 4 total touchdowns, again, only 8 incompletions. And again, Saquon Barkley has kind of been the story of this offense, I would say, the entire year long. I mean, over 10 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. This defense was smothering. But there was a point in this game where it was close. I mean, Washington had it down to an 11-point game. And then, it was just another haphazard fumble, their third of the game. Jaden Daniels kind of had a garbage time interception. But other than that, I think he played a really flawless game. You've just got to give credit where it's due. I think this Eagles team was just a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Maybe a lot better.
Yeah, but, like you said, the Commanders didn't do themselves any favors. They were running out of feet to shoot off at some point there. But, it was really just kind of blah. It was like, okay, well, that happened. I think a lot of people were looking forward to the game afterwards.
Yeah, they sure were. I mean, we're not going to spend too much time on football because, of course, next Friday is going to be the week before the Super Bowl. But the other team meeting the Eagles is once again the Kansas City Chiefs. They punched their ticket to the big game with a 3-point win over the Bills yet again. And, time in and time out, the Bills just can't get over the hump that is what's kind of blossoming into one of the best dynasties we've ever seen. Certainly the current dynasty at our hands right now. And you got, again, credit where credit is due. Patrick Mahomes played an amazing game. 3 total touchdowns. He was amazing on the ground in this one. But just look at his playoff record. He's 17-3. He's made the AFC Championship, I think, every year that he's been a starter. So that's 7 years in a row now, which is right. Just absurdity. But against man coverage, where he did a ton of damage against the Bills, 12 for 15, 170 yards, and a passing touchdown. I mean, he's the best quarterback in the NFL, and it's frankly not close, especially come playoff time. You watch him, and there's just...
I mean, they just get it done,
They get it done.
That's the fact of the matter. And the Bills just can't. I mean, if any franchise has proven it ever, I think it's the Buffalo Bills. But, the Super Bowl should be fine. The Pro Bowl is going to happen. No one's going to watch it.
Well, the Pro Bowl is like the worst all-star game of any of them because they don't even play the sport, really. It's just like guys hanging out, playing flag football.
Which is fine,
It's fine.
I guess.
Yeah,
I mean, it's cool for them. It's cool to be honored, like Robert Hunt for the Carolina Panthers.
And J.C. Horn as well, right?
I think so, yeah.
I think we've got 2 Pro Bowlers.
And now that the biggest football stage in football is set, a rematch 2 years in the making, both teams are going to travel down to New Orleans to the Superdome for the Super Bowl. Sorry, that's a little bit of a tongue twister. Super Bowl 59 between the Eagles and the Chiefs. Kendrick Lamar's going to do the halftime. That should be funny.
It should be.
If nothing else.
I really hope this is a good game. The last Super Bowl between these two teams, it was really good. I think these are the 2 teams that the people wanted to see the least, outside of our Philadelphian producer, Tyler Perrone.
And Philadelphian tech man, Doug Andreuzzi.
Of course, we got to shout out our own. But again, I don't think people wanted to see the Chiefs, but again, they're the best at winning. That's what it comes down to. And really, they're looking for the first three-peat in the Super Bowl era. It's only happened one time, but that was,
the Green Bay Packers during the Great Depression.
Yeah, They did it in the 60s, but only 2 of those years were the Super Bowl. One of them
I was
was
thinking of the 30s.
No, one of them was the NFL championship.
Yeah,
so
they
it
did that there, too.
didn't quite happen, or at least count the same way. But I hope it's a really good game. Again, I think these are the 2 best teams in the league. So it should be quite a show. It was a great one last time. The Eagles looking for revenge. It's got everything you want. And something to note, I saw yesterday, New Orleans hosting their 11th Super Bowl.
My God.
Well, New Orleans and Miami have each hosted 11, which is kind of crazy.
Well, I mean, the Superdome really was one of the first, big stadiums. So, I mean, that really does kind of make sense once you think about it. It's a kind of central location, I guess. It's a big city. People can get to it.
Absolutely. And again, we're going to touch on the Super Bowl heavily next week. Of course, we'll hit you with some numbers, a lot more stats. As both teams get 2 weeks to prepare, so do we for the Super Bowl. But one thing we've gotten that's been lost in translation a little bit is hockey. So here's our biggest surprises from the NHL season thus far. Is again, we're just catching you guys back up. Surprise! These 3 teams are good, and at the beginning of the year, JP, I don't think we would have thought.
No, a lot of these teams were in the bottom kind of 4th of preseason projections, especially teams like the Senators and Blue Jackets, and Washington coming off a year where they were the worst playoff team ever of all time, unceremoniously swept. If you look at them now,
cracking skulls.
They're cracking skulls. They're number 1 in the Eastern Conference and the Metro Division. They're on pace for 118 points on the season. They're best in a season since 2016, back when that man had a lot fewer gray hairs, Alex Ovechkin. He's been a big part of it, of course.
I was going to say, it doesn't matter what color his hair is. He's still playing about as good as a 40-year-old. It's crazy.
And he's joined by Dylan Strome, who's been really good for them, as well as Pierre-Luc Dubois, one of their big free agent acquisitions. So they've just been, really kind of – they haven't skipped a beat. They just have not gone through a period where winning was very tough for them. Of course, they're really good at scoring, and they're really good at preventing the other team from scoring. If you do that consistently,
that usually equates to wins.
You're going to end up with a really good record. They're a team that's going to be – it's going to be interesting to watch them come playoff time because there's only really one playoff guy on the team, which is Ovechkin. So we'll see. Now, as we kind of move on to the second, this is probably the biggest surprise, as it's so much more than just hockey. After the tragedy over the offseason with Johnny Gaudreau, being killed by a drunk driver, this team, you kind of had every excuse in the book to kind of, I don't want to say pack it in, but hockey took a back seat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And instead, they've rallied the team, this city, this group of people around one of the worst things that's ever happened in hockey recently. And look at this. 25-19-7. They've won 9 of 12, tied for the first wild card in the East. And they're just fun. They play for each other. Kirill Marchenko has been one of the best players in the National Hockey League so far this season.
And they got a new head coach as well, right? They got the Bruins head coach after he was let go, if I'm not mistaken.
Which was
right?
bizarre.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And so they've been very fun, of course, led by timely scoring. They're 7th in goals for. They have the number 12 power play. And most importantly, they're 4th in shorthanded goals. They're just a gritty underdog story that they're looking to make the playoffs for the first time since 2020. I really hope they do because I think it'd be one of the best stories.
Yeah, and I think everybody can really rally around this team, especially, with the tragedy with the Gaudreau brothers. But I love the way that this team is using that as a force to propel the team forward. And, they're not just wrapping up their season because something horrible happened, but they're using it as motivation and fuel, not only to, get a fan base behind you, but build a successful hockey team, and they're doing just that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a very small market, which is weird because it's Ohio, lots of pro sports, but they really had the feel of kind of a college program in Columbus. They're looking to make the playoffs for the 7th time. It should be really fun. And then our other surprise, the Ottawa Senators, a team that every year it's like, oh, this is the year that the Senators rebuild actually brings them back to the playoffs. And it just hadn't happened, so people were finally like, all right, that's enough. But lo and behold, they're 27-20-4, 3rd in their division, ahead of teams like Boston and Tampa Bay, and they're looking to make the playoffs for the first time in 8 seasons. They made the Eastern Conference Final, and they made the big move in the offseason to get Linus Ullmark from the Boston Bruins, and then Brady Tkachuk has been great for them scoring, leading the team in goals. They're 6th in goals against, so their defense has been very strong in front of Ullmark. They're just a really fun team, Spencer.
Yeah, and Tkachuk is one of those guys that really, I feel like you always see him in a bunch of highlights, getting physical after he scores a goal. You know, he's always throwing shoulders, but that's kind of the gritty feel you want in your hockey team. You know, you're not afraid to drop the gloves, swing a little bit. But Ullmark is one of those guys who can always keep you in a game, and I think that just becomes even more valuable in the postseason. It's like we saw with Shesterkin a couple of years back against the Canes. Just dominated the series.
Yeah.
You know, he was just almost unbeatable and did enough for the rest of his team to score. Ullmark is kind of on that same level where it feels like if he's playing up to snuff, you know, you can hang with any team because you've got a brick wall in that.
Yeah, and it's really just kind of there's such a log jam in the middle class of the Eastern Conference. So many teams just separated by a couple points. So these teams getting hot. I mean, you have a great goaltender like Ullmark, you can go on a run, or like Columbus has been winning 9 of 12. They're starting to separate themselves. And it should be fun to see. You know, I think this is going to be one of the best kind of playoff races. Normally in hockey, around this time, the playoffs are kind of like, well, we know who's bad, we know who's really good. It's just coming down to some wild card spots,
More
but not
middle
anymore.
feeders than usual this year?
Yeah.
That's a good sign. And, you know, we're going to switch gears a little bit. And in an ode to Radiohead, we've also got some of our biggest letdowns in hockey this season. We had to do it. I mean, it's a beautiful graphic, but if you're a fan of these teams, not great times right now. You might want to give this album a spin.
Yeah, you know, it's a great, you know, it's a great tune. It's a great listen. And like you said, if you see yourself on this graphic, you've probably listened to the OK Computer, you know, experience many times. Some worse than others. Let's get through it here, starting with the New York Rangers, who were kind of, you know, one of the best. They won the President's Trophy last year, won the Metro. They started the year 12-4 and then just completely were derailed. They sit just 2 games over 500. They're only 4 points out of a wild card spot, but they're 12 points out of the third spot in the Metro. So they're really kind of locked into that wild card race, and they're just treading water. They lost 12 of 15 for a stretch in December. They went on a 4-game losing streak in January. But you know, there's a reason for optimism because they are still the New York Rangers. You have all this star power.
You've seen it come together already.
And you have Igor Shesterkin, who's had a little bit of a down year, a save percentage barely above 900, but really the defense in front of him has been horrible. Adam Fox has been one of the worst defensemen in the league, but you got to believe that some of those guys can just put it together. Even though they already traded Jacob Trouba, their captain, and they've threatened to trade Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, all these longtime franchise stalwarts.
And, you know, those are the guys you really circle come playoff time. You know, in the last couple of years, they've really risen to the occasion for the Rangers. And I think we were definitely surprised to see Trouba moved. And, you know, you wonder if they're close to making the decision to either, you know, commit to trying to get it done with these guys or just blowing it all up, you know.
Yeah, and they're actually, you know, the rumors for one of the teams that's on this graphic involves a trade that would send one of their players to the Rangers, which would try to shake up things. But not getting them quite yet. Our next team, I mean, the big money spenders, the Nashville Predators, spent more money in free agency than anybody else in hockey, and has been worse than almost anyone else in hockey, sitting at 30th in the standings, 6 games under 500,
yeah, that's good.
13 points out of a playoff spot. I mean, you know, they went out, they grabbed Stamkos, they extended UC Saros, they brought in Brady Shea and Jonathan Marchessault as well. I mean, the only reason for optimism I could think of, they can't play this bad the whole season, right? I mean, they're too talented, you'd think.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, my God, they're horrible.
Yeah. And especially when you go out and spend that money, you would expect the opposite of this. You know, you really don't want to, you know, have worse results than you did last year after really just going all in. And it seems like, you know, the chips are on the table and the Predators are just floundering right now.
Yeah, I mean,
it is a good reason for optimism, right? Because, like, you know, the game's played on ice and not on paper, but in theory, the paper looks a lot better than it does right now on ice. So it should turn around at some point, maybe.
They just don't score.
Yeah.
And when they don't score, UC Saros can't keep them in the game because you can't win games 1-0 in all 82 games. And it just sucks because, you know, playoff hockey is better when Smashville is there. It's one of the best environments in sports. They had nearly 100 points last year. They're on pace to be like 30 points below that. It's tough, man. They suck. They just suck. Of all the teams we've talked about, they just suck. But, you know, our last team here, a bit more of a moral mentality letdown as the Vancouver Canucks, just 1 point out of a playoff spot. a year from being one game away from the Western Conference Finals, but they're a soap opera, man, with JT Miller and Elias Peterson like such at arms with one another. Even team ownership has acknowledged it and said, yeah, like it's affecting the team. We're not playing well because our two stars hate each other. And it's like, what in the world?
You know, that's such like, it's so frustrating to hear that like something like that is maybe keeping you, you know, from functioning at your highest. Because, you know, in my head, you're one game away from the Western Conference Finals. You lose to a team that made the Stanley Cup, and you know, then this year you let drama get in the way of things. You know, this is a team that clearly has the talent to almost, you know, make a run to the Stanley Cup. JP, when's the last time they've been there?
2011.
2011.
It was a great series, but when they lost, they burned down their own city.
I was going to say, is that the last time they've been good?
Before last year, yes.
Exactly.
And so, you know, it's affected everyone. Thatcher Demko's been horrible, although he did have 31 saves. So the reason for optimism for this team is, you know, to steal a quote from South Carolina alum Darius Rucker, the My Bad Comeback song. These guys are going to, you know, put aside their differences, get together, and put the team back on their back. Because, truthfully, they just haven't played well this season. They left Quinn Hughes, who's over a point per game, out to dry. Jake DeBrusk, who they signed to come in, leads the team in goals. JT Miller and Elias Peterson, if they can put aside their differences, this team is still very good.
And they're not far out of the playoff race.
No, they're just 1 point out.
Yeah.
Or if they trade those guys, the guys they bring in will probably be very good because those guys will fetch a pretty penny, like with the New York Rangers, who is where Elias Peterson and JT Miller have both been rumored to go to. But you know what?
Wouldn't that be hilarious if they have all this drama on the Canucks get traded to the same team?
On a bit in Broadway? I mean, good Lord.
I mean, you could write a play about that.
But as always, you know, we're not done with hockey because we've always got something to say about
the best for last, baby.
Carolina Hurricanes, baby. As Carolina left for dead in the offseason after, you know, they lost a bunch of people after last season's disappointing second-round exit.
It's never over.
They were projected low 90s in the point totals, fighting for a wild card spot. They're on pace for 107 points. They're 32-16-4, second in the Eastern Conference, only to the Washington Capitals, the old Southeastern Division. And really, I mean, it's just been the fact that they're still the Hurricanes. They got Sebastian Aho. They have Andrei Svechnikov.
And JP, they made a bit of a deal. Was it last week?
Oh, yeah, January 25th. A large Finnish moose was deposited into Raleigh as the moose is loose, ladies and gentlemen. Mikko Rantanen, the superstar left wing for the Colorado Avalanche, traded to Carolina in exchange for Martin Necas and Jack Drury. And truthfully, Spencer, this is a trade that Canes fans have been dreaming about forever because this is an honest-to-God superstar-level talent. 3 straight 90-point seasons, his last 2 over 100. He's 5th in the NHL with 66 points, on pace for 107. They haven't had a 100-point scorer since Eric Stahl in 2006.
2006 is that's almost 20 years of not having a 100-point scorer, and the Canes have still been this good.
Yeah, I mean, they're a by-committee type deal, but now they have that bona fide star talent. And he got a point versus the Rangers in the Canes 4-0 win in Madison Square Garden.
Scored a goal last night.
Scored his first goal last night in the win over the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, he's been everything, you know, that's been advertised. He's an upcoming free agent, but Carolina has the best cap space situation in the offseason because they let all those guys go. So it was kind of a masterful gambit by Eric Tulsky.
They've been working this one.
I mean, you know, he's one of the best GMs in the NHL in just his first year. He was kind of the brains of the operation with Don Waddell. But not to be lost, the second guy they got in the trade, I mean, it's not every day you trade for the former #1 overall pick and former MVP in Taylor Hall, and he's such a footnote. He's been great. He's great passing. He got his first point against the Rangers. But the team has just kind of felt unlocked since then, and it's been a lot of fun to see.
Yeah, and a couple things that one thing that seemingly the Canes have been missing is kind of that superstar ability in the postseason. You know, they've been able to make it, but haven't gotten over that hurdle. And now they have someone that's like, you know, we've got, you know, not only Rantanen, now we have Sebastian Aho and him that we can go to in the postseason. 2 guys that, you know, when the chips are down, you can almost certainly count on them to get you at least a point a game, you know, against the powerhouses of the East like the Florida Panthers, who've seemingly the Hurricanes always run into and lose to.
Or the Rangers.
Or the Rangers. It's been one of those two. And so the Canes finally have a little bit of superstardom to try and get over that hurdle. But also we've talked about not in front of the camera, how good this team is in the power play.
Yeah.
I mean, they're unstoppable, and now you just add another, superhuman talent to
And
that.
they've got the best penalty kill in the NHL once again. And really, I mean, it's just going to come down to how healthy can the goalie stay? Goaltending has literally been the one issue for the Carolina Hurricanes. They scored last year. They just couldn't stop anything. But, this year it feels different. There's not a team that's like the one team that's kind of the runaway gauntlet is such an unknown in the Washington Capitals. So it's like this year feels very open, and it feels like a year that Carolina could finally get over that hump. We'll just have to wait and see for the best playoffs in sports, though.
And, now that football's coming to a close, we'll definitely be more in tune with hockey for you guys. But don't go anywhere. We've got a whole slate of professional and college basketball coming up right after the break.
As the NBA approaches All-Star Weekend, let's check in on the top teams in each conference, East and West. Starting, of course, with the East. Spencer, I mean, it's been a great road for a couple. There's been 3 teams all year long that have kind of been the best, and there's been middling results behind them. I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. You'd think LeBron had come back home.
It certainly looked that way. I mean, Kenny Atkinson has his team playing at a new level. Evan Mobley has taken a huge leap. He has been fantastic this year. And again, the Cavs, they're just beating the snot out of teams, especially to start the year. I mean, they were winning, at a high pace. And again, the reigning champion Celtics, still second in the East, a really great squad, but looking to kind of settle in a little bit. It's kind of that post-championship, not necessarily a slump. They're 33-15, but I think they're going to lock it in after this All-Star break.
Yeah, they always kind of play like this where they start off the year a little bit slow and then really turn it on late. Jaylen Brown has caught the ire of fans a little bit, which is, whatever, I think.
Was named an All-Star. We will get to you later, Jaylen Brown.
We will get to him. The New York Knicks, perhaps making the biggest blockbuster move of the offseason, bringing in Karl Anthony Towns, sit there in third, just a game behind Boston. And they're a team that, you don't think the Knicks are kind of an offensive superpower. They're the best offense in the league. And the defense has come out of late, powered by the return of Precious Achiuwa. They're a ragtag group of scoundrels. And it's just fun to watch with them, Josh Hart.
My old roommate used to DM Precious Achiuwa with his high school mixtape. And Precious responded, never forget. But he's kind of an awesome, undersized backup center, especially in lieu of Mitchell Robinson being out.
Yeah, he'll never come. But if he does, the Knicks get just that much better. But Precious, that's probably the best coaching job Tom Thibodeau's ever done, is making Precious. They got Landry Shamet and Cam Payne coming up. I mean, this is a Tom Thibodeau team with a 10-man rotation. What has happened?
And now, don't let that fool you. Mikal Bridges is still
Mikal
running
Bridges
a cool
will die
40
on the
a
floor
game
before he gets subbed out.
Yeah.
But, God, they'll go down swinging. They're a fun team, man. And right behind them, Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks.
It looked like a dumpster fire to start the
my
year.
God,
and they have really turned it around.
Doc Rivers was like, I'm going to take coaching seriously. And then they started winning. I guess he was right. The NBA is the funniest league in America.
It really is.
Then the Pacers, who made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, are right there. They've been kind of treading water, getting better as of late.
And Halliburton, also started really slow. He looked really bad.
He's still up and down. Didn't make the All-Star team, thankfully, because, truthfully, that would have been a disgrace.
Yeah, didn't deserve it this year. Moving out to the West, you talk about the best team in the league. It's the OKC Thunder. This team is dominant. And you know who they've been missing outside of 10 games this year?
Isn't it? It's not Alex Caruso.
It's Chet.
Chet.
Yeah, they're number 2. They haven't had all year long, and they're 37-9. You just think about how good this team is right now, and that next gear they're going to hit whenever Chet Holmgren comes back. He was holding opposing players, I think, to like 19% under their field goal percentage when he was on the court. This team is
They're
disgusting.
a wagon. They're very fun.
It's a crazy defense.
I think, it's kind of like a lot of these teams here where we just haven't seen them in the playoffs very much. So I'm very interested to see, because in basketball, more so than anything else, it's a completely different animal. And just behind them, it's the Houston Rockets right out of the cellar into second place. They've had a whole host of young guys like Amen Thompson playing really well alongside established veterans like Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet, Ime Udoka.
Got Şengün making the All-Star game.
Yeah.
It's a really good roster, and also they're rumored in some trade mills because they've got a lot of draft capital and young guys they could potentially ship out.
Yeah, they have too many good young players for their own good.
Exactly.
And the same goes for number 3, the Memphis Grizzlies back in the mix. Even with John Morant not playing all that great, it's been the Jaren Jackson Jr. show. One of the best players in the NBA, in my humble opinion. Desmond Bane came back from injury, has been playing really well.
Zach Edey's been a great rookie.
He
really
has. I mean, his game has translated to the NBA better than I think anybody thought it could.
Really happy for him.
People were so stupid about him, and I'm so happy.
Yeah.
The Grizzlies have kind of been that team where they draft these players that nobody thinks will be good in the NBA, like Desmond Bane, like Jaren Jackson Jr., like Zach Edey, like Scottie Pippen Jr., and guess what? They turn them into good NBA players because you don't have to be an 18-year-old who's never been good at basketball to actually be good in the NBA. I think more NBA teams should learn from that. It's the draft strategy of the Grizzlies and the Knicks and the Cavs. 3 of the best teams in the NBA right now. It's very fun.
Couldn't have said it better. And, it's those guys with high floors. It's not like they have low ceilings. Zach Edey could turn into even better than he already is. But, you got to give a lot of credit to Taylor Jenkins. The Grizzlies have also had an excellent G League program throughout, the last couple of years. They haven't had Gigi Jackson this whole year, who's going to slot
been great
in.
After, he fits the mold of when I said an 18-year-old who's never been good at basketball. Gigi Jackson's been great for them. I think the Grizzlies just have they're like 2K when you cheat to get all the great development.
They're a really good org.
But then in 4th place, you have the Denver Nuggets with Nikola Jokic, who's,
averaging a triple-double.
Yeah, he's the only thing keeping this team afloat, I think, other than Russell Westbrook, God rest his soul. Then in 5th place...
He's actually been really good. We'll get to them soon.
Yeah, but other than them, they lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and they've just kind of struggled to replace him, but they're still 4th in the West, a very good West. And in 5th place... Maybe a little surprising, the Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron, Anthony Davis, new head coach J.J. Redick. My glorious king, LeBron James, the second best basketball player of all time. But they're a team. They drafted Dalton Connect, a high floor, low ceiling rookie, and they surrounded. Their free agents acquisitions have actually kind of hit. They're a good team.
And it's weird because I feel like you haven't actually been hearing that much about them. They're just kind of calmly in 5th place. And you know what? I think a lot of Lakers fans would be happy with that. I'm a little surprised they're playing this well. But it's a big credit to them. But we're going to move on a little bit from league standings because the league released all-star rosters in their entire yesterday. And we've got those for you and even an MVP ladder. So let's hit on some of the best players in the league here. We'll run through the starters real quick. In the West, it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, also atop the MVP ladder. He's been amazing. Steph Curry gets the nod at guard. Jokic gets a spot at that forward center position, second in the MVP ladder, followed by Kevin Durant and LeBron James. And the starters in the East, it's Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell for your guards. And at the forward center, you've got Karl Anthony Towns, Jason Tatum, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And really, I think they got the starters pretty dead on.
Yeah,
I think the starters are really good here. And, I don't think we have any complaints with that. We'll get to more of our complaints in a little bit, but let's talk about that MVP ladder. It's SGA at the top, followed by Jokic. I think it's definitely a 2-horse race. Again, a huge credit to the other 3 guys on those lists because there's a reason that all the teams that are, headlined by these players are good playoff teams.
Yeah, exactly. Giannis is Giannis. I think he's somehow become very underrated. I think 100%. It's just because he doesn't play a super flashy style. He's very special, near and dear to me, the Greek freak. God bless his soul. Jason Tatum, he's just there. He's fine. Jason Tatum, we've kind of gotten used to how good he is, which shouldn't take away from how good he is. I think you have Karl Anthony Towns, who is having a career year, but also getting to play in a much bigger market than Minnesota, 100%. So people are kind of taking notice of him. But yeah, you look at the starters. The West is just the platonic ideal of basketball. All these great names. It reminds you of the Olympics with the Team USA there with Kevin Durant, Steph, and LeBron. And then
the Serbian team they had to go against where Jokic was just...
Yeah, the one-man army. But in the East, you have 2 Knicks starting the All-Star game. Imagine showing that to somebody like 5-6 years ago. This is the first time they've had 2 starters in the All-Star
Courtney
game.
Lee, Iman Shumpert probably.
Jerian Grant, but I love him so much. But
Anthony Early. Sorry, okay, we'll stop.
This is the first time the Knicks have had 2 All-Star starters since Clyde Frazier and Earl the Pearl Monroe in the 70s.
Where were you?
Yeah, not even Patrick Ewing and Allen Houston got to these heights, ladies and gentlemen. But you look at the reserves, lots of good players. I just can't help but feel like there's some sort of buzz missing, Spencer. Somebody near and dear to our hearts.
My brother, LaMelo Ball, is criminally snubbed here from the All-Star game. Again, we like to say we agree with the starters. Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, 2 of the 3 best teams in the East, the 2 best guards in the East. I am completely comfortable with them being the All-Star game starters. But where I have a problem with is Darius Garland, Cade Cunningham, Damian Lillard, and Tyler Hero. So
Hero's terrible.
And he's been good this year. He has been good. He's the best player on the Heat, I would say, this year. But again, let's see what the stats have to say, because we are Hornets fans. But we're going to show you unbiased stats here. LaMelo Ball has more points per game than any of the 4 other guards. And the rebounds, pretty comparable, middle of the pack there. 7.3 assists, that's tied for second here on the list. He has the most steals, the highest usage rate out of anyone else.
Anyone in the NBA.
Yeah, he does. He does have the highest usage rate in the NBA over, technically it's James Wiseman, but he's played 1 game.
That doesn't count.
That doesn't count. So minimum a guy who plays 20 or 30 games. It's LaMelo Ball with the highest usage rate. True shooting percentage, again, because we're not going to hide the numbers from you. He is a little more inefficient than these guys, but it's because he has such a high usage rate. He's on the Hornets.
Yeah.
He is on the Charlotte Hornets.
Dude, he shares a backcourt with Nick Smith Jr. Kind of a break, you nerds.
But the whole thing is, JP, how did these other guys get the nod over LaMelo?
I don't understand. Darius Garland, he's a guard on a good team. Cade Cunningham.
He's really good and efficient, and it makes sense, but
Cade Cunningham's horrible at defense. He turns the ball over more than I think any other starting guard in the Eastern Conference. LaMelo Ball could throw the ball to DeBaby on the sideline at the Spectrum Center 4,000 possessions in a row, still turn the ball over less than Cade Cunningham does, while scoring more and playing better defense and being more efficient. He's not a very efficient player. He's still more efficient than Cade Cunningham. He scores more than everybody else. He's just cooler, I think, is an important factor, because he makes the Hornets watchable. The Hornets are the worst team in basketball without him, and they're a top 10 offense with him.
Oh, why, thank you, our tech man here. Even more stats for you. We've got so many numbers. I was on StatMuse like crazy last night. The Hornets with LaMelo, 11 and 20. You're like, well, that's horrible.
No,
look at their offensive rating with him. It's middle of the pack, points per game about in that bottom 5th of the league. But then you look at what they are without him, and they are an atrocity to mankind, a sword to the eyes. 1 in 12, the worst offensive rating in the league, under 100 points per game without LaMelo Ball. This team is abysmal when you take the best player off it. I think that is the definition of an all-star. He's the only reason this team is somewhat relevant. He got the #1 fan vote because he's the most fun player in the league to watch. He was voted the 3rd best guard in the East by the players, the people actually playing against LaMelo. But some of the writers who vote for the All-Star game,
who have hated LaMelo since he was in high
school,
school,
are telling him that he gets injured on purpose by showboating a 3 against the Lakers because he stepped on Jared Vanderbilt's ankle.
It's definitely.
I'm about to pass out on stage. I'm getting too hot over here. It's just an atrocity. I don't know what's happened. How is that guy not an all-star? He's the only reason that the Hornets are not probably the worst team in basketball. I think definitely. That's what the numbers say, JP.
Absolutely. And it just sucks, because the point of the All-Star game is for people to be able to watch stars they typically don't. That's why these games were created in the first place. Nobody gets to watch LaMelo because the Hornets are never on TV. So
they've had games pulled from national TV slots.
Just maybe one day they'll all be healthy. Cooper Flagg will stay in North Carolina, and we'll get to actually watch the Hornets on national TV. But speaking of Cooper Flagg, speaking of North Carolina,
you nailed it. The best rivalry in college basketball is coming to a screen near you this Saturday, 6:30, ESPN Cameron Indoor Stadium, baby. We're back. Tobacco Road, fire me up. Again, we've talked about this rivalry every year. It's something near and dear to my heart. It's something near and dear to just
Everyone who grew up watching basketball, watching sports knows about North Carolina Duke. Even those who don't. I mean, even you had presidents going in attendance to watch this game. It was that important, that big.
It still is.
I mean, yeah, it still is, and it's so much fun. The faces have changed, but the hatred, the vitriol has remained the same.
Oh, it'll never die.
As we move on here now to North Carolina, definitely the underdog in this matchup this weekend. They're in desperation time, Spencer. Tell me a little bit about the Heels.
100%. We've touched on them, a couple weeks ago, talking about how they've really fallen in these close games, 4-1 possession losses. But in quad one opportunities against the best of the best, they are 1-8. And under Hubert Davis, they've actually got a losing record in quad one games. They just haven't been very good against the best. They need a quality win. Some people say they need to win out to get in or win the conference tournament. What better opportunity than a top 2 Duke team to go and get that win that you need? They're 4-15 in history when unranked against a top 5 Duke team, but they're led by a trio of guards. It's R.J. Davis leading the team in scoring, Seth Trimble leading them in rebounding and steals, and Elliot Cadeau leading them in assists per game. These guys have got to step up because we talked about last week, the bigs just aren't going to cut it for UNC. They haven't all year long, so the guards have got to rise to that next level. Ian Jackson not pictured, but it's his first game against Duke, and he's been great for this team.
Yeah, and freshman Tar Heels going to have a history of showing up in that first game against Duke really well. But yeah, like you said, the bigs have been horrible. Vin Allen Lubin, I don't understand that acquisition at all. The big old white guy, I can't even remember the name of, is just, Hunter Tyson's brother.
Cade Tyson.
Cade Tyson has been abysmal.
Everyone was thinking he would start at the 3. He'd be a great shooting presence from Belmont. Actually just hasn't been very good for the Tar Heels. But let's move on again to the high-powered team in this rivalry this year. It's the Duke Blue Devils. They have been just outstanding.
Yeah, and the main event. I mean, it really needs no further introduction. But I'll try anyway.
I had 3 players for UNC. Yeah, Cooper Flagg just leads Duke in about every statistic possible.
Absolutely. I mean, their only losses are by 5 points to Kentucky, who's one of the best teams in basketball, and 3 points to Kansas, which I think was on the road.
Both of these were on neutral floors in the first 5 or 6 games of the season in those tournament plays.
Yeah, like the Champions
Classics.
Yeah. But I mean, they've just rattled off 14 straight wins ever since. They're projected, I think, close to they're up there with Auburn in contention, who they beat for the number 1 overall seed. They played with a little fire. They've gotten a little, I don't want to say lucky, but they've played with fire against NC State. They had to escape there with a victory. Notre Dame as well, which was bizarre. Mm-hmm. What those teams have in common, NC State and Notre Dame, they shoot really well from 3. They shot really well from 3 against the Blue Devils. So that's kind of, I think, what North Carolina really needs to replicate. Get the looks on the 3-point line and make them is what's going to be important, because that seems to be the only Achilles heel to this Duke team.
And again, we talked about the guards from North Carolina that need to step up. For R.J. Davis, this is your last time playing at Cameron Indoor Stadium. As you want to cement your name into Tar Heel legacy, there is no better thing you can do outside of winning a title than beating Duke. It's the number one thing. That you look at all the Tar Heel greats, they've got some signature moments against Duke. Tyler Hansbrough, 4-0 in Cameron Indoor Stadium. First, we could just rant about Psycho T. One of the coolest guys ever.
Great brother as well. Former Notre Dame legend.
Yep. That's right. Yeah,
could shoot a heck of a 3-ball. But anyway.
Really could. Well, that's not the only rivalry game we're going to talk about. It's a Big East brawl. JP, would you tell us a little bit about it?
St. John's and Marquette on a Tuesday night at the Garden. It's going to be outstanding. But like how UNC Duke is this long-standing thing, Marquette against St. John's, it's a battle of old versus new. A founding member of the Big East in St. John's from 1979. Marquette joined the conference just 20 years ago, but they have made one heck of an early impression. As you can see here, it goes back to Lou and Chris Mullen for the Johnnies.
The
to
sweater
the new
game, baby.
Kadari Richmond and Rick Pitino, Shaka Smart and Cam Jones from Marquette, and Steve Novak, the discount double check, and Tom Crean. Both teams tied for first in the Big East. It's going to be outstanding. We start, of course, with the St. John's Red Storm back on top in the Big East. Their best start to a season since 1986. 18-3 on the year, 9-1 in conference play. It's a 7-game win streak for Pitino's boys, and it's been because of the portal power. They brought in Zubia Ejiofor and Kadari Richmond, as well as some other guys.
I'm sorry about Kadari, man. That hurts.
It stings, but Seton Hall has no money, and that's just unfortunate. They are,
and they don't have Rick Pitino. I think that's a reason for this portal power. You look at one of the best coaches still left in this game that has a lot of history to his name.
Exactly.
Rick Pitino is an outstanding college basketball coach.
His rebuild jobs are the stuff of legend, and you can see it here.
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, you look at what he did at Louisville.
Kentucky, Iona.
Exactly. He's
Bradley.
You just rattle off schools that you don't know where they even are
the
on the
Knicks.
map. Exactly. And,
Reece. I mean, he's been everywhere, man, to quote Johnny Cash. But this St. John's team, it is insane that they just get it from everybody. R.J. Lewis, Ejiofor, Kadari Richmond. They haven't made the dance since 2019. They're looking to get back there, looking to win their first Big East regular season title since 1992. And they're just fun, man. They get out in space. They play very hard-nosed defense. They just hammer you inside.
It's a staple of Rick Pitino teams. It makes perfect sense. But in this one, going up against Marquette, it's not an easy task. I mean, you talk about their model consistency. These teams have the same record, 18-3, 9-1 in their conference. They won the regular season last year in 2023. They made the Sweet 16. Unfortunately, fell. This was my team that went. I can't remember. I think I had them going all the way to the title game against UConn last year.
I had them going to the Sweet 16. They fell to perhaps my greatest shot-calling moment of all time, the North Carolina State Wolfpack in the Sweet 16. But
I'm pretending it didn't happen.
It's a battle of structural philosophical differences. Marquette has not used the transfer portal in 3 years. St. John's is nothing but the transfer portal outside of R.J. Lewis. But Marquette has been able to keep these players around, keep them in the program for multiple years, and they just keep winning. You got Cam Jones, who's been around for a while, scoring nearly 19 a game. David Joplin leads the team in rebounds and block shots. And for a feisty defense, it's Stevie Mitchell, the freshman, who's been great. Both these teams have to take care of business. It starts with St. John's against Providence on Saturday. For Marquette, it's a matchup with the back-to-back national champion UConn Huskies. But, man, I mean, this one's going to be a hard-fought game. Both teams top 15 in adjusted defense on KenPom. They both get out and running in terms of tempo as well. So we might see a lot of turnovers, sloppy basketball.
Big East ball.
Oh, yeah. I mean, tire irons, elbows, out in pace. Guys diving for loose balls. I wasn't going to dive onto the table.
Yeah, but I'm glad you didn't. I mean, God forbid we break a table here on Ball Don't Lie. But again, it's all going down in the Garden. We're going to take a breather here, maybe get a sip of water. That's all we've got for you today. We'll be right back after a quick break with this week's Pick'ems to wrap up yet another episode of Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome back to BDL Pick'ems. After last week, I'm 8-7, while Spencer pulls ahead to 9-6 after week 2. Let's just go through the games real quick. Starting with women's basketball, Auburn travels on the road on noon on Sunday to take on number 2 South Carolina. Spencer, who do you got in this one?
We went 2-0 picking South Carolina last week. Not going to switch up. I mean, I think this team showed their dominance taking down LSU here at home, and what was a really great game, great showing in that second half. And on the road against Tennessee, a really good team who kind of surged late. South Carolina hung on for both of them. They take care of business with all
Yeah, I think this is a proverbial, for lack of a better term, layup. Give me South Carolina. Now as we move on to another USC with almost more of a proverbial
Definitely
layup.
the fake one.
Oh, definitely the fake one. We were a school before they were a state. Number 4 Southern Cal going on the road to Iowa, 1:30 on Sunday. You know, the Hawkeyes feeling the losses of Kate Martin, Caitlin Clark, all those great players. Can they pull the upset against Juju Watkins and the Trojans?
They're feeling, they are definitely missing Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark's going to be in the building this Sunday. They're retiring number 22. When Southern Cal comes into town, we've seen how loud that place gets. I think you mentioned the words Caitlin Clark, and that building sells out in moments. I think the Hawkeyes get it done against a top 5 Southern Cal team. They pound the rock physically down low to Hannah Stelke, and I think the Hawkeyes pull a big one here at home with arguably one of the greatest women's basketball players ever, the greatest in their history, in the building.
Do you think she'll just shoot around on the court before the game just for old time's sake? I think that'd be fun.
She will definitely be on the court at some point. I mean, I'd hope she'd pull a logo 3 or something for the fans.
I mean, she can do all she wants, but frankly, Southern Cal has looked like a different beast
they're really good.
since they got beat down by Notre Dame in their own home, and I don't think that train stops anytime soon. I think they take care of business against Iowa. It could be a good game, though, and a much bigger game in the Big Ten. Number 1 UCLA hosts number 8 Ohio State at 9:30 on Wednesday night. One of the biggest games in women's college basketball of this new conference alignment. Spencer, who do you got in this one?
I'm going to keep going with the Bruins. I mean, this team has shown no signs of slowing down. Lauren Betts has been fantastic for this team, putting up about 20 and 10, couple blocks per game. Especially as of late, she has been unstoppable. I think the Buckeyes are going to have their hands full. I think the Bruins keep winning, and really, I'm hoping for a tournament rematch against South Carolina.
Yeah, I
for.
picked against UCLA last week, and they made me pay for it, so I'm going to go with the Bruins this week. I think they're a much better team than maybe I thought they were. Maybe they're not reading the press clippings. They're not watching BDL. Or maybe they did, and they were inspired by me picking against them. Who's to say?
I think we have to have the mindset that everyone watches Ball Don't Lie. All 8+ billion people on this funny globe of ours.
Truth, Nuke.
Moving on to men's basketball, we're going to start with a couple weird games. Teams we haven't pitched.
It's great ball, yeah.
It is. It's the top 2 teams in the Ivy League. It's Yale at Princeton, 5 p.m. tonight, Friday.
This reminds me of my homework I have to do. Princeton's a wagon, man. They beat Rutgers. They have one of the best guards in the country. They're a fun style of basketball to watch. New Jersey basketball is built different. I think Princeton continues their march back to that NCAA tournament with a win over Yale.
We want to see this team back in the tournament. You're absolutely right.
Yes,
the Princeton Tigers are fun. They are good, and they can hang with Power 5 teams. I think they definitely get the job done against Yale at home to take that first spot in the Ivy League. Moving on, a Big Ten rivalry. It's Indiana at number 10 Purdue. Again, tonight at 8 p.m. I'm going with the home team in this one. It's real hard to play at Mackey in Indiana. I think Mike Woodson, that seat's getting real hot.
Yeah, it is. But Mackey hasn't proved to be as impregnable as it was in previous years. Ohio State went in there and beat the Boilermakers last weekend. And with their backs against the wall, I think I got to roll with the Indiana Hoosiers getting their first big win over Purdue in quite some time. I just think they got what they can rally, dig deep. I think if Mike Woodson can do nothing else, it's get the guys ready for a big game. I think they do it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is make or break time for this team with this season, and maybe with Mike Woodson at the helm. It's going to be a fun one. Number 5, Florida travels to number 8, Tennessee, noon on Saturday. A noon basketball tip-off. It's just great fun. Both of these teams play different styles. It's high offense versus lockdown defense. Who you got?
Well, let's give you about who can impose their style more. And truthfully, I don't think there's a better bet in history than betting against Rick Barnes in a big game, whether he's at Texas, Clemson, or now Tennessee. Boy, give me the Gators. I think they're going to chop up the Vols and Rick Barnes on Saturday.
Yeah, I think Florida has too much offensively, especially if they get going from deep. If Walter Clayton gets that 3-ball going.
When Micah Hanlogton comes back, this team's going to be a wagon.
It's a scary sight when the Gators are hot from 3. I'm also taking the Gators. Another SEC matchup. It's number 20, Missouri, at number 14, Mississippi State. Who you going with here?
Well, Mississippi State is one of these teams that I like to clarify as the garbage ball teams in the SEC. They don't shoot. They don't score. They do get offensive rebounds, I guess, because they miss so many shots. And when you play a team like Mizzou who can hit shots, I think if the offense travels for Mizzou, if they get some timely threes early, I think they go on a run. I really like this Mizzou team. I think they win big in Starkville this Saturday.
Mississippi State also has a penchant for letting teams hang around. South Carolina had umpteen opportunities to go and win that game. They failed. We'll get to the Gamecocks later. I'm also going with the Tigers on the road, a team that can score. Sometimes they can really turn up the pace. I think Mississippi State wants to play slow. They want to, play their style of ball. I think Missouri denies them and gets a big win. We're actually going to save the ACC Hallmark matchup for the end of Pick'ems. Number 13, Texas A&M travels right here to CLA, 8:30 Saturday night tip-off. Who are you going with in this one?
I'm not wasting any more breath than I need to on this team. I'm taking A&M.
Yeah, let's Colin Murray-Boyles, hopefully he gets drafted to a fun team. I think A&M gets it done, but I do really like this A&M team come postseason time. I think they're a lot of fun. I think Wade Taylor is just awesome, a short guy who's just chucking it. That's just sweet. Moving on to that Big East sprawl we were talking about. It's number 9, Marquette, traveling to St. John's in the Garden, 6:30 on Tuesday.
I mean, this is what Big East basketball is all about, man. It's two great personalities that coach. It's great teams that they get after it on defense. They just fight, man. And in a fight like this, an old school Big East bar brawl at the Garden, you got to give me the home team. Got to give me the Johnnies, the Red Storm of St. John's.
Yeah, I really like Rick Pitino and the job he's done at St. John's. I think they get it done too. Just their physical presence might be a bit much for Marquette. But again, I think this is going to be two teams you're going to want to keep your eye on come tournament time.
You'll see them again at MSG in the Big East tournament. I take that to the bank.
Take it to the bank if you're a betting man. You heard the man. Now moving on to the rivalry we've all talked about. It's the best one in college basketball, one of the best in sports. I'm going to let you start. It's UNC at Duke, 6:30 on Saturday.
This one's tough, man, because this UNC team, you got to think eventually they win one of these games. Duke has shown themselves to be vulnerable. They're vulnerable from deep. They had to get away with it against NC State. They threw up all over the court. The vibes are weird around the Blue Devils right now. And in the pregame for this show, I picked Duke, but over the course I've been thinking about it. I'm switching my pick. I'm taking the Tar Heels. I think that they're just going to hit enough from three. I think Hubert Davis kind of saves his skin here, and they break this win streak. Streaks are meant to be broken. But allow me to lob this one to my good friend and UNC superfan, Spencer Ball.
And we talked about it earlier. We talked about it earlier about how if you want to cement yourself in the history books, you have to rise to the occasion. UNC is not a better team on paper, 100%. Game's not played on paper. It's played on the court. It's played in Cameron Indoor, a place where UNC needs a win. There is no other time. It has to be now for UNC. RJ Davis, you need your draft stock to rise. You want to make the tournament. You want to see this play as much basketball as you can in the Carolina Blue. And to get it done, it's going to have to be him. It's going to have to be him in this trio of guards that, frankly, they're going to have to pull their own weight. Again, I don't think Hubert Davis's job is on the line, but I think this does a lot to ease the hearts of UNC fans. I think Carolina gets it done on the road in Cameron Indoor behind a huge game from senior RJ Davis, and that's going to do it for this episode of Ball Don't Lie. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and TikTok at SGTV at USC.
To keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtv@usc.com. For SGTV, I'm JP Barry.
And I'm Spencer Ball. And from all of us here at SGTV, have a great weekend, Carolina. Forever to thee.
I might swerve in that corner. Whoa.
Go. That was a good show.